Tensions mount as Moyes' move angers Everton. Willian becomes the latest player to leave the Anchi meltdown. And with Suarez set to stay, who's next for Arsene Wenger? Joining me today are international football writer Peter Staunton and goal correspondent Greg Stobart. I'm Nat Coombs and this is Transfer Talk. Let's start with new business then, Pete, and plenty of business going on at the Russian club Anchi. Goal described it as a fire sale. What's been going on and what kind of players are likely to get dealt this summer? Yeah,
for one reason or another, Suleyman Kerimov, the billionaire who invested so much money in Anzi Makachkala in January of 2011, he's basically pulled funding from the club. There was a deal that went wrong in the Belarusian stock market that wiped out a lot of his wealth. And that's been cited as maybe one of the reasons why the money is unforthcoming this season. But whatever the case, whether it's to do with infighting in the playing squad, whether it's the fact that the squad is just hemorrhaging money without any investment from Champions League football, or whether it is indeed to do with a decrease in his own personal wealth, Kerimov has decided to reduce the budget of the team from about 150 million euros per season down to about 50 or 60 million euros per season.
So top European clubs licking their lips in anticipation. Who's coming on the market?
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of teams are going to be looking at players. Some of the Russian players have already moved within the borders. You know, you've got the likes of Alexander Kokorin and the captain of Russia, Igor Denisov, and Yuri Zhirkov. They've all gone to Dynamo Moscow, for example. But then the overseas players have yet to be transferred, other than Mbarek Boussoufa, who's gone to Lokomotiv. But players like Lassana Diarra still available. Samuel Eto'o, disruptive and influence he is, will still command some interest in the market. And then the crown jewel himself, Willian, who's probably their biggest chance to recoup a big transfer fee.
Greg, Willian, the crown jewel, as Pete calls him, where's he likely to end up?
He's going to Spurs, it seems now. Liverpool were very interested, but Tottenham have come up with a £30 million offer. He knows Andre Villas-Boas well. They've been speaking, they text a lot. Spurs have been interested for 18 months now. They nearly signed him last year. He's perfect for Tottenham because, especially with Gareth Bale on his way out, they lack a bit of creativity. That's going to happen. And for the third time this summer, Spurs are going to break their transfer record.
Well, they're really flexing in the market, aren't they, Spurs? Lamela, the latest name being associated with them. What's the latest on that?
I mean, if Tottenham sign Willian and Lamela, it's absolutely certain that Gareth Bale is off to Real Madrid. But they're definitely interested in Lamela. There's been talks for the last few weeks. Of course, Franco Baldini, who's now technical director at Spurs, has come from Rona. So he knows intimate details about Lamela's contract and he knows him perfectly as a player as well. I think they're going to go for both. They'll certainly sign Willian. We'll see what happens with Lamela.
Pete, interesting situation at Roma. Lots of ins and outs. It seems on the surface that they're dealing a lot of players and not necessarily replacing them with like-for-like quality. Do you see it that way or do you see it differently?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that, Nat. But the problem at Roma has been, since the investment of Thomas Di Benedetto, is that every season seems to be one of upheaval and the start of a new era. So, whether it's Luis Enrique coming in from Barcelona B, or whether it's Zeman coming back in with his brand of attacking football. And now this year you have Rudy Garcia bringing what he knows from the French League on. Every season has to be a season of upheaval. So the remnants of other people's transfer campaigns are always left within the squad. So this season they have made some decent acquisitions. They've obviously brought in Tim Jedvaj, the young Croatian defender who's going to replace Marquinhos. They've brought in Kevin Strootman, fantastically equipped Dutch international. They've also had to replace the goalkeeper, Steck Ellenberg, obviously gone to Fulham. So, they have replaced, I wouldn't say like for like, but they have traded well so far. And if they do get some football out of Gervinho, Rudy Garcia would know him quite well from his time at Lille, then, you could be looking at a side who could perhaps challenge modestly for that third Champions League place.
If they get football out of Gervinho, I'd be impressed. Osvaldo on his way to the Premier League. Southampton breaking their transfer record once again. Tell us about him.
I'm a big fan of Osvaldo. I think on his day, he's, he reminds me of Gabriel Batistuta. I think some Roma fans saw some scant evidence of that during his time at the Olympic Stadium. But there's no doubt about it, there's a player there waiting to be tapped. He had some successful time at Espanyol under Mauricio Pochettino a few seasons back before he moved to Italy with Roma. And I think if he can settle down and stop creating disruptions and concentrate on his football, then Southampton's fans could have somebody to take to their hearts. Like, dare I say it, like they took Matt Letizia to their hearts all those years ago. This guy's that good.
Moving into headliners then, and Greg, Osvaldo, signing we mentioned, is a frustrating situation once again for Arsenal fans. He could easily be an Arsenal player right now, couldn't he?
He's another striker that Arsenal could have done with. He would have improved them. They've missed out on Higuain and Jovetic already. They're not going to sign Rooney. They're not going to sign Suarez. And after losing their first game against Aston Villa, it's turned into an absolute disaster for Arsenal. They need to spend some money. The fans are furious. Wenger's under pressure. But who's available now? They've made a complete mess of this transfer window.
It's a vicious circle, isn't it? Because whoever Wenger goes in for now, that selling club is going to know he's desperate for players, and everybody's going to say it's a panic buy.
Yeah, they're being reactive rather than proactive now, such as the state of affairs. They're putting in bids willy-nilly for players like Kabay and Kondogbia. Michu's being linked, also Ashley Williams. And all the selling clubs, they know Arsenal have got to spend money now because they've got an injury crisis as well. Really not going well for them at the moment, especially when you compare them to Tottenham, who've spent very wisely.
Pete, the Kabay bid was interesting, 10 million, which I think undervalues the player. He's a hell of a player, but is he the right kind of player, the player that Arsenal need right now?
Absolutely not. I think Wenger has looked at what happened to his midfield on Saturday when Ramsey and Wilshere were in there and realised that at the moment he's lacking a screener. That screener should have been Luis Gustavo, who he should have signed last week, who ended up going to Wolfsburg. No Champions League football, but he's gone there for a higher wage than Arsenal were offering. Now, sometimes there's a skew there when Arsene Wenger, who's an astute judge of players, is surprised by the fact that a Brazilian international who's just won the treble wants a high wage. I mean, he needs to get real and realise that his wage ceilings are not being obeyed at any other club in Europe. And if he does want to get the Higuains on board, and he does want to get the Luis Gustavos on board, he's going to have to pay the market rates in transfer fees and in wages.
It's Wenger who's holding Arsenal back now. Gazidis has said they've got the money to spend 70 million war chest. Everyone knows they've got the money and the wage budget, but Wenger's still living 15 years ago. He thinks that he can get a player for 2 million and turn him into a 30 million pound player anymore. And you can't do that. You've got to spend the money. Other team scouting has caught up, and the wage bill, he's just got to pay it, because that's what you need for players who will win you the league.
And it's funny how you mentioned that, turning a £2 million player into a £30 million player, because when you look at Michu, that's exactly what's happened with Michael Laudrup. He's identified the player, he's come into the Premier League, scored a bucket full of goals, and now he's going to be on the move, maybe, to Arsenal.
But to be fair to Arsenal, fellas, they have gone in for some of the big players. They made a bid for Suarez. They wanted Higuain. It wasn't a case of them only looking for these £2 million gems that might turn into great players. They've gone big, and those players aren't signing. How come?
One factor is the money, especially the transfer fees. Wenger sets a strict limit. If they wanted to, they could afford to spend 50 or 60 million on Suarez, but Wenger won't allow it to happen. The other is they finished fourth last season. They want to buy players who can win them the title. And those players, the very, very best players, don't want to go to Arsenal. Wayne Rooney would much rather sign for Chelsea, for example. OK, but they're not the only club that have been rebuffed in terms of the Premier League by international stars. We've seen Fabregas deciding to stay at Barcelona, not go to Man United. That's left David Moyes now with plan B. The bid he's put in for Fellaini and Baines, the joint bid described as derisory by Everton. Do you agree with that?
I'm not so sure if I agree that the bid is derisory, because Marouane Fellaini had a buyout clause in his contract that expired at the end of July for about £23-24 million, and nobody decided he was worth that money. Leighton Baines, he's 28 years of age, no doubt about it. He's a very good left back, probably still the second best left back in England after Ashley Cole. But you know, he's pushing on. He's not got a whole load of time on his contract. I think 12 million is probably a fair price. Maybe cap it off a £15 million bid. So I don't think that particular double bid is too much under what Everton can expect to get for those two players.
Greg, is that going to placate the United faithful, those two signings, if they manage to land them?
I don't think they'll get Baines. I think the signing they really need is a central midfielder. So Fellaini would make sense, and Moyes, of course, knows him very well. They do have to spend. I think they're going to keep Rooney, which is a boost for the fans. I think they need Fellaini in there, the physicality, the box-to-box nature that he plays, because the likes of Cleverley and Anderson, they're not at the level that United need at the moment.
So, gents, we're now in added time where we put some of our viewers' questions to you. We're going to start with you, Pete. And from Jesus Ramirez via YouTube, wants to know if Inter are likely to sign anybody.
Inter, they've already traded this summer. They've brought in Rolando and Wallace on loan. They've brought in Icardi and Belfodil as strikers. They've brought in Campagnaro at the back. I think their restructuring is done. But for Inter, the problem is at this stage is that they're no longer, at this stage of their development, they're not a Champions League team. So they have to rein in their spending, rein in their expectations, and sign players within that next bracket. And that's what they've done already this summer.
Christian asks via Twitter, as indeed hundreds and hundreds of viewers have been doing, what is the latest with Gareth Bale, Greg?
Well, Bale still wants to leave. He's still not going to play for Spurs this month. Tottenham still want 100 million, the chairman Daniel Levy, but there have been negotiations. Real Madrid at the moment are offering around £86 million. I think it's going to happen. Spurs seem to be spending the money already. It's just a matter of when and how much they agree for. They'll probably meet in the middle, £90 million.
That's it for today. If you like what you saw, don't forget to press the subscribe button. And if you want to ask us a question, you can do so via YouTube, Twitter or Facebook. For more on the stories we talked about today, head on over to Goal.